Tennessee went 7-6 last year under first year under Josh Heupel, right? Not a great record. Pretty good for Tennessee compared to some of the other seasons they've had in recent years. But really, they could have gone 10-3. They were 7-6. Had three close losses, and a couple of them were sort of controversial. They had a close loss at home against Ole Miss, a close loss in a bowl game against Purdue. Those two in particular had some controversy, and a close loss early in the season at home to Pitt. They win those three games, they're sitting at 10-3 instead of 7-6. Now, if you're going to look at it that way, you also have to say, well, they only beat Kentucky by 3. It was like a shootout type of game. What was that, 45-42, something like that? So they also could have been 6-7, right? Had they lost a Kentucky game. The point is that they had 3 or 4 games that could have gone either way. 3 of them went against them, right? Pitt, Ole Miss, and Purdue. What needs to happen in 2022 for Tennessee? They have to get, 3 of those 4 games to go in their favor. And then I do think it's possible Tennessee gets to 9, maybe even 10 wins, depending on a bowl matchup, right? And then you got their 3 big rivals, of course, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. They play those 3 teams every year. They have not had much luck against those 3 teams over the last 10 to 12 years. Alabama's beaten them something like 15 years in a row. Florida's something like whatever 14-1 or whatever it is in the last 15 years. Georgia, what is Georgia against Tennessee in the last 15 years? 12-3, something like that. Anyway, so they haven't had a whole lot of success against those 3 teams. That could change. I think Tennessee has a chance to win one of those 3 games this year, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But good morning, though. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. The Tennessee Vols, every Tennessee Vols fan, favorite YouTuber, Uncle Lou, that's right. Welcome aboard. Good to see you, too. Good morning to that. But it is Uncle Lou here. Subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Sometimes they're even watchable. You can let me know down below what you think about this video here. But I'm doing a whole series of schedule previews. Now, these aren't technically prediction videos. I do talk about the games and sort of give you my early thoughts on them, but these aren't technically prediction videos. It's more or less just taking a look at the schedule. How does it compare to last year's schedule? What are the non-con slated games look like? Let's look at the conference schedules. Which games are at home? Which ones are on the road? Where's the bye week? Where's the rivalry games? Are there any trap games? Is there a stretch of the schedule, like a 2 or 3 game stretch that's more difficult than normal? Those kinds of things, right? I'll do some prediction videos. In fact, I usually do 40 or 50 of them a year. I go team by team. I start those in June, though. This is kind of just taking an early look at the schedules. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below what you think Tennessee is going to do in 2022, but I'll get around to my predictions in June. But let's take a look at the schedule and see what the 2022 schedule looks like for Tennessee. Now, they're going to start out with a home game against a Group of 5 team, Ball State. Now, Tennessee's got to win this game, and I expect that they will. I don't think we're going to see like a Georgia State situation here. I would expect Tennessee to start the season 1-0. They'll be a significant favorite in that game over Ball State. Week 2, though, this is not going to be easy. You have to travel to Pitt, a place you're unfamiliar with. It's not a place you play all the time. Tennessee and Pitt scheduled that home and home last year. It was in Knoxville. Pitt got the road win. Tennessee looking to return the favor this year and get a road win at Pitt. This is the ketchup and mustard game? Yeah, this is the ketchup and mustard game. Pitt plays on Heinz Field, named after the Heinz family, Heinz ketchup, right? And, of course, Tennessee fans throw mustard bottles on the field when things don't go their way. This is the ketchup and mustard game. I think this is a big game for Tennessee. Maybe not the biggest on their schedule this year, but this is one of those games last year, like we talked about at the beginning of the video, that sort of could have gone either way, right? And things just didn't go Tennessee's way down the stretch, and they lost a close one. They have to win more of those games than they lose this year. And if Tennessee wants to have a chance to get to 9, possibly 10 wins, whether you're talking regular season or bowl game, this is a game they have to win here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the video here. I do think Tennessee is a better team than Pitt, but teams like Tennessee, one of the hurdles they have to get over is learning how to win close games as opposed to losing them at the end. When you've been down for a while and things always seem to go against you. You know, you look up on the scoreboard, it's the fourth quarter. There's only a few minutes left. Tennessee's up by 3. The team is thinking, well, you know, how are we going to find a way to blow this one? Because that's what they're used to doing. You have to flip-flop that mentality around. Winning close games is a learned behavior, as is losing close games. Tennessee's got to flip that around. Can they do it week 2 on the road at Pitt? I think that game will go a long way towards determining how successful Tennessee is for the rest of the season. Third game of the season, third non-con game in a row, back home in Knoxville, this time at Neyland against the Akron Zips. Just like with Ball State, this has got to be a game, that Tennessee's got to win and win handily, really. If Tennessee wants to get where they want to be, you can't be struggling with the Ball States and the Akrons of the world, and I don't think that they will. Tennessee's offense should be probably even better than it was last year. Hendon Hooker comes back year 2 as the quarterback in that Josh Heupel offense. The defense is where most of the questions lie, for me anyway, when it comes to Tennessee. Tennessee's got 2 things working against it, in my opinion, defensively. Number one, they're not the most talented team around when it comes to defense. That's not, it's just a fact. You can check the recruiting, but it's just a fact. It's not the most talented team around defensively. Number 2, as good as that offense is when it's working, and when it's working, it's great, that's no friend of your own defense either. Scoring quick like that, scoring in bunches, running plays as quick as you can, leads to shorter possessions for your offense, whether you score or whether you go 3 and out. In any case, it leads to shorter possessions, which is putting your defense right back out on the field time and time again throughout a game and over the course of the season. And multiple times last year, we saw that catch up with Tennessee in the second half. If you remember the Tennessee-Alabama game last year, that game was actually competitive into the third quarter, and then Alabama kind of ran away with it in the last quarter of that game. A lot of that is the offensive philosophy that Tennessee has requires that its defense spend a lot of time on the field or a lot of possessions out on the field, and they just wear out over time. We'll see, what sort of strides that defense can make in 2022 versus what they were able to do last year in 2021. Now, after this Akron game, another home game, okay? First SEC game of the year for Tennessee, and it's against Florida. I think this is the biggest game on the schedule this year for Tennessee. Depending on what Tennessee fans you ask, a lot of them are going to tell you, Alabama's their biggest rival, or Florida, or Georgia, or whoever they name. This particular year, forget about who the bigger rival is, I think this is the most important game on the schedule this year for Tennessee. Florida is down. They've got a brand new coaching staff. They've got issues at quarterback. They were absolutely horrible last year. And you get them at home early in the season before, hopefully, if you're a Tennessee fan, before Billy Napier and company have a chance to kind of figure things out down there in Gainesville. I do think this is a game Tennessee can win. I mentioned earlier they're whatever they are, something like 1 in 15 in the last 16 years or whatever it is against Florida. They want to beat them once in forever. If there was a year where you felt comfortable picking Tennessee to win this game, at least in the offseason before we've seen these two teams play at all, this has to be the year. I do think Tennessee's got a pretty good chance of winning this game, and it would be a huge boost of momentum to the Tennessee team, its fan base, the school, the football program, recruiting, you name it. You're going to say, well, if Florida's going to be bad, what's the big deal about beating them? Well, Florida's been bad a bunch in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, how many 4-win seasons? Florida's got multiple 4-win seasons. Last year was a complete failure, yet they still find a way to beat Tennessee almost every single year. So, yeah, it would be a big win. Tennessee, I think, has got to get the monkey off their back. If you're looking at their 3 biggest games, of course, being Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, this Florida game is definitely the one they have the best chance of winning, in my opinion. And then you get a bye week. Pretty good spot for the bye week. Maybe you're thinking it comes a little early in the year, and I guess it does. But having your bye week between these 2 games, probably not a bad idea. I think this home game against Florida is going to be a very emotional game. It's going to be a big game. And if Tennessee wins that game, it's probably good that they have a week off, because that would be beating Florida. Again, regardless of how good you think they are, beating Florida would be one of Tennessee's bigger wins over the last several years, right? So then you get a bye week to sort of come down from that if you beat them, or to recover from that if you lose to them before another pretty difficult game on the road at LSU. And just like with Florida, you can say whatever you want about their record last year and how good they were or they weren't. They bring Brian Kelly in, and the guy is a proven winner. I mean, look, Brian Kelly his issues don't come in the regular season, generally speaking. Now, Brian Kelly's going to have a learning curve in the SEC, no doubt about it. Look, believe me, I'm not here to try to pump up Brian Kelly. But LSU, though, is one of the most talented teams, not just in the SEC, but in the country. They consistently recruit in the top 5, top 10 every single year. They have players and playmakers there. If Brian Kelly is able to put all that together, LSU becomes a very dangerous team, and it's always hard to play at LSU. I think Tennessee's got a better chance of beating Florida at home in Week 4 than they do winning on the road at LSU in Week 5, although it's possible they could win both those games. We'll see. Then you come back home and you take on Alabama. Alabama will be, as per the norm lately, a pretty significant favorite in this one against Tennessee, even though it is a home game in Knoxville. I don't know how many people you're going to see actually picking Tennessee in that one. Then you have another non-con game sort of sandwiched in the middle of your season here, UT Martin, the Skyhawks. Another home game then against Kentucky. This was a great game last year, 45-42, I believe, a shootout type of game. Some people are high on Kentucky. A lot of people wanting to pick Kentucky second in the East. I'll tell you what I hear. It's pretty close in terms of the numbers of people picking Kentucky second in the East versus picking Tennessee second in the East. Those are most people I talk to have Georgia winning the East, and then it's either Kentucky or Tennessee after that. A few people trying to jump on the South Carolina train with Spencer Rattler there at QB and the Beamer ball thing that they're doing. This will be a pretty big game, and I expect it to be a good game too, Tennessee and Kentucky. Tennessee's had Kentucky's number in a similar way that Florida has had Tennessee's number. Tennessee's had some horrible teams that have still managed to beat Kentucky almost every single year, so we'll see how this one goes on October 29th. Home game there for Tennessee. And then another tough game on the road at Sanford Stadium against Georgia. Look, yes, Georgia's my favorite team. It's not a secret. I'm a college football fan, though. I mean, I just love college football. Yeah, Georgia's my favorite team. Not very many people are going to be picking the Tennessee to win this one on the road. That's why I think the Florida game is so important, because I'm having a hard time finding justifications of why Tennessee could beat a Georgia or Alabama this coming season. I'm not finding it difficult to find reasons why they might beat Florida, right? For one thing, the Florida game's at home for Tennessee, the Georgia game's on the road. I just think that's a tough task for Tennessee year 2 under Josh Heupel. But we'll see. Again, anything can happen when the game is played. Then Missouri, this is a must-win game for Tennessee. I don't think Missouri's going to be all that good this year. They might be the worst team in the SEC East, them or Vandy. This is a game you need to win, because the following week you go on the road at South Carolina. In fact, your last 2 games of the regular season, both road games against SEC opponents. South Carolina, it's kind of a difficult team to figure out, right? They're going to have Spencer Rattler at QB. They bring some other the tight end in from Oklahoma too. They got a running back that they like. I have questions about their offensive line. I've got questions about them defensively. Their defensive front may be okay. I've got some questions on the back end, and you don't want to have questions on your back end when you're playing Tennessee, right? They're going to sling the ball around. Williams-Brice Stadium can be a tough place to play. Tennessee has found that out on several occasions. I remember back in 2016, at this point in the season, all Tennessee had to do was beat either South Carolina or Vandy at the end of the season. The schedule was just like this one. Their last 2 games of the year was at South Carolina and at Vandy. All they had to do was win one of those 2 games to win the SEC East. Tennessee had beat Georgia earlier in the year. They had beat Florida earlier in the year. They were in the driver's seat in the SEC East. Not only did Tennessee not win one of the 2, they didn't win any of the 2. They lost to South Carolina. That was the infamous game where basically Jalen Hurd quit in the middle of the game, refused to go in, that whole mess. And then they turned around and lost their regular season finale to Vandy, basically handing the East over to Florida. So at South Carolina and at Vandy to wrap up the regular season schedule for Tennessee in 2022. Overall thoughts about the schedule. I like the at Pitt deal, right? I like these Power 5 versus Power 5 non-con matchups, and I love it when they're a home and home. I don't like neutral site games. Georgia is playing in a neutral site game again this year. Played Clemson last year, played Oregon this year. I don't like these neutral site games. I prefer home and homes. Of course, a couple of Group of 5 teams on here with Ball State and Akron, and then UT Martin. I'm not sure. I don't think they're FCS, are they? And I guess they're Group of 5, but I don't have a problem with scheduling Group of 5s or even one FCS team. I don't have a problem with it. I do prefer 10 Power 5 games. This is 9, but I don't think it's a terrible schedule. I really like the at Pitt. Now, as far as the conference schedule goes with the home and the away, I think it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity to get Florida at home this year for Tennessee in the first month of the season. I really think Tennessee's got a good chance of winning that game. If that game was flip-flopped and it was in Gainesville, Tennessee could still beat them. But obviously, if you can play the game at home, you prefer that. And I think this is the year where Tennessee can get Florida. You're rotating opponents from the West. Well, you play Alabama every single year, right? You get them at home. Unfortunately, there's just a huge talent gap still between Alabama and Tennessee. And you draw LSU as your rotating opponent, one of the most talented teams in the SEC West, despite their record from last year, and one of the toughest places to play, not just in the SEC, but all of college football at LSU. Tough draw there. Kentucky at home, okay, a game Tennessee needs to win. At Georgia, you play Georgia every year. It's hard to pick Tennessee in that one right now. Again, by the time this game is played, we'll have seen both Tennessee and Georgia play 7 or 8 games, so clearly we'll know a lot more then than we know now. But in terms of just trying to look at this thing now, 6 months still from college football starting, or 5 months, whatever it is, tough to pick Tennessee in that one on the road at Georgia. And then the last 3 games, I think, are all winnable. Missouri at home, and even though you have back-to-back road games, one of them's at the worst team in the SEC, probably Vandy. The other one is against the South Carolina team that I think Tennessee can beat. So a pretty manageable schedule, I think, for Tennessee. Not the most difficult schedule I've seen. Not the easiest either. Some pretty good matchups, an interesting road game, non-con at Pitt. A good draw, getting Florida at home in a year where I think you can beat them. Well, maybe that's offset by having to play at Georgia, but still, I think this is the year you can beat one of those 3 teams. I think it'll be Florida this year, even if you stumble against Alabama and Georgia. So you guys let me know, how many wins can Tennessee get to this year? Do you have a ceiling? If everything goes right, how many could they win? What if some things go wrong? What's the worst case scenario? Let me know in the comments down below. And again, I will get to the prediction videos in June where I'll put these schedules back up on the screen and tell you who I think is going to win and lose every single game. Shout out to Alan V over on the UncleLou Patreon page. He's the one that suggested I do this Tennessee schedule preview. I can't thank you guys enough over on the Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video that'll take you there if you want to look around. All the previews that I'm doing are coming from suggestions over on the Patreon page. And once I finish up everything over on the Patreon page, then I'll come back to these videos and I'll take suggestions from the comments section and maybe try to do some more schedule previews as well. But if you haven't commented on that post over on Patreon yet about which team you want to see me do a schedule preview for, head on over there. Let me know. If you haven't signed up on the UncleLou Patreon page and you want to look around, there's a link in the description that'll take you over there. All right, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. Have a good morning.